Hi, it is Anita Serene, and I'm here with Morg. Do you want to introduce yourselves to the viewer?
Sure. My name is Morg, and I am an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to create a new earth. I have a YouTube channel. You can look me up at Morg Official. I have a lot of books out, and you can find those on Amazon. And they will be listed in all of my videos on my channel.
Very cool. And all of the links will be posted down below in the pinned comment as well as the description. I think a lot of people know you from your reality show that you did.
Yeah, so I was on a reality TV show for a couple seasons. Before I was really doing my YouTube channel, I was a sword swallower and the host of a freak show. So I did a lot of stunt work, and I was on a reality TV show that followed the events that we would do at the freak show. And so, yeah, that's where a lot of people know me from.
Did you bring your sword today?
I did bring my sword, yes.
Or are they going to be able to see you swallow a sword
yes,
today?
At the end of the talk, we can, I'll swallow the sword, yeah.
Okay. So we connected because I was telling you how I recently converted to Christianity, and now how you used to be an ex-Christian and you decided to walk away from it.
Yes.
And I wanted to know why.
Well, okay, so long story short, I grew up in a very strict, religious, conservative, fundamentalist Christian household. I consider Christianity, fundamentalist Christianity, to be pretty psychologically abusive. You know, if you're telling a child that they're dirty, broken, sinful, and flawed, and they're going to go to hell and be basically tortured for all eternity unless they please this invisible being in the sky that's constantly reading their thoughts, it was very distressing. So as I got older, I started to notice all of the heavy and blatant contradictions in the Bible, which, you know, I mean, I was pretty brainwashed at that time, but still reading it firsthand, seeing all the violence and bloodshed and just horrible things in the Bible led me to questioning the Bible itself. And eventually I started to leave Christianity as I began to study philosophy and science and mathematics and taking myself on a path to find truth, basically, because I felt like I'd been lied to my whole life.
Wow. So you were saying that your family brought you up extremely religious and you decided to leave the faith at about 20 years old. Is that right?
You know, I started questioning roughly in my early teens, probably when I was around 13 or so. And it took me a long time to leave the faith. So I probably wouldn't have considered myself 100% not a Christian until around like probably 1920-ish. But over those years, I was questioning, and because it's not something you can just, you know, quit overnight if it's something that you've been, you know, heavily indoctrinated into. So it took a long time. And even after leaving Christianity, I still had a lot of issues to deal with, like, for example, the fear of hell, since that was, you know, pretty much nailed into me every day. Even though I rationally knew hell didn't exist, that the psychological leftovers was still there. So I have religious trauma syndrome, or RTS, which mimics the symptoms of PTSD and CPTSD. I'm pretty much over most of it now, but it was pretty difficult. Leaving Christianity is no joke. It's very hard, which is one reason why I like to raise awareness about religion and why I make a lot of videos that I do surrounding religion, is to allow people to, first of all, start questioning themselves, and then also provide a space for people who might be going through it, knowing that, hey, you're not alone. A lot of people have had this happen.
Right. Now, are you still afraid that you might possibly go to hell one day? Is that always in the back of your mind?
No, not at all. It used to, but not at all. And this is because I know, like I said, I did a lot of studying philosophy. And so I know that Christianity, as described in the Bible, is fundamentally logically incoherent. So I know that hell, as it's described in the Bible, it literally can't exist. Now, that's not to say there might be other interpretations of hell. Like, I like to think of heaven and hell as states of mind or states of consciousness, but that's completely different from, you know, fire and brimstone for eternity. So it depends how one defines heaven, how one defines hell. But as it's described in the Bible, no, I don't.
So when you say religious trauma, where does that trauma manifest if not the fear of hell?
I have recovered a lot. Originally, the fear of hell was still very intense. And that was, part of the religious trauma. Now, how it manifests is more subtle, but different things, like I'm a perfectionist, and that stems from me having to, basically make sure I was perfect and please a God constantly because of that fear of sinning and doing something wrong.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so things like that. And I can still get kind of triggered if I'm in certain ceremonies that remind me too much of religion.
Really? Such as what?
And again, it doesn't bother me as much now. But even if I'm going to say like some sort of, let's say, New Age spiritualist group, or even like a Buddhist group, or anything really, which I don't have any problem with. But if they do something like everyone starts holding hands and singing songs, or do something that's very reminiscent of what I went through, it can just sort of trigger those feelings.
Oh no, of like fear and anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, it just very uncomfortable. I guess more, it's not something I would say like, if they're doing it, it's not like I feel afraid. I feel more just very uncomfortable because it puts me back in that place where I was.
I understand. Yeah, I understand completely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that you are recently converted.
Yes, I, like you, grew up extremely Christian in a Baptist church I would go to with my grandma, who was one of like the main people there. And each summer I would go to Christian summer camp. And I was raised with, you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in God. So at 15, I decided to rebel and go into witchcraft, and I made my whole career on witchcraft, which reading tarot cards, astrology, and spells to make people do things that you want them to do with energy. Do you believe in spell work?
Oh, yeah.
So you believe that you can cast a spell on someone and make them feel or act a certain way?
It depends how one defines spell work and magic in general. But I mean, I do some practices myself. And I look at them as a way of reinforcing the unconscious mind. So it just depends how one defines. I do believe in magic and spell work, but my interpretation of it is very specific. So, for example, if one is, let's say, invoking archangels, I look at invoking archangels as not literal beings, but as aspects or energy within the self that one is calling up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you believe that you can manifest like a text from somebody?
I personally don't believe that it would be that direct. I think that you could perhaps, let's say, do a spell to put yourself in a position where you might be in a place where your actions make someone want to text you. Like, what I mean? Like if you do something, like let's say you like someone and you want them to like you back. And so you do some sort of spell to get this person to like you. I don't, in my opinion, how this would work would not be like you're literally making that person like you, but you're putting yourself in a place where maybe you're more receptive or more open and making them feel more comfortable or have a more, of a lure towards you because you're more psychologically open.
That's such a smart way to view it. So it's not that you are forcing anyone else's energy. You are just changing your own energy to be more receptive to what you want. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So, continuing on with my story. So I grew up Baptist and then I got into witchcraft. I built a career off of it. And I manifested a lot of amazing things with witchcraft. I manifested the love of my life. I manifested my YouTube channel. And I manifested just a lot of success in the years that I was into witchcraft, way more than I did in Christianity. This sounds like I'm advertising witchcraft, but I'm not. What happened was, so I'm very open about this. I don't really care. What was fueling a lot of my success was drug abuse, mainly prescription pills. And it was killing me. I was.
Yeah, that can be rough.
Yeah. And I started developing massive panic attacks. And then I started, getting off the pills and instead started doing very spiritual practices involving marijuana and mushrooms. I'm not telling anyone to do that, by the way. I'm just telling my experience. And what I ended up going into hell in my mind, like how you were describing that hell is a state of consciousness.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that got me out wasn't like calling Freya, which I used to have a goddess statue of Freya that I worshipped and gave offerings to. Mm-hmm. It wasn't manifestation or mantras. It was when I called out to Jesus, and Jesus took me out of the feeling of suffering I was feeling and cured me of my panic attacks.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so, I mean, like, honestly, like I said, I had a very negative experience with Christianity, but the way you approach Christianity seems much different than most fundamentalist interpretations of Christianity. So, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, you practice different things that, you know, my family would have seen as like totally satanic and evil. But obviously, you seem very accepting and very open. And
I really appreciate that, because I believe God is the energy of love. And so when I see things like believe in Jesus or go to hell, it makes me cringe, because it's very like, it's almost like you're deterring people from God. I actually feel like those people are demon possessed.
Well, see, that's interesting, because like, again, I'm very much open to, say, the teachings of Jesus. So I promote Gnosticism a lot, and Gnosticism is a branch of Christian mysticism, which essentially Jesus Christ is looked at as a figure who came here essentially to help us reach a higher state of consciousness, rather than, oh, you have to believe in me or you're going to go to hell. It's rather he came here to show us, be an example of what we can become when we look inside and manifest our own divinity. So I really don't have I don't have a problem with Jesus. I don't have a problem with a lot of these symbols and archetypes. It's mostly just how fundamentalist Christianity has interpreted that and twisted it and basically used it as a control mechanism for years. And like you even just saying, like, you look at God as an energy of love or something. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. I mean, I think, you know, you have a very interesting way of like, how do you define being Christian? Like, what does being Christian mean for you?
Being Christian means that I don't act based on my own free will. I act based on what God wants me to do. So, you know, I don't pick partners in love because I think that I'm like, ooh, they're hot. I pick them because God tells me. Or like job opportunities, I'll go to God. I don't make any decisions myself. I just sit there and I ask God what direction I'm supposed to take. And he gives me clear as day answers, and I follow it. And whenever I follow him, it leads me to the greatest peace and happiness that I've ever known in my life. And with the witchcraft and manifestation, it felt like the monkey's paw, where I would manifest things that I wanted very easily. But it was always like it came with a price. It came with, you know, ruining my health, my mental health. The guy turns out to be a demon, you know, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced something like that?
Which aspect? Like having a connection with God, or what, or having negative consequences for using practices?
Negative consequences from like calling archangels and things of that nature.
No, I wouldn't say that I have, because I approach it with a lot of mindfulness and caution as well. You know, I'm never out there to try and harm anyone or do anything that would affect anyone else negatively. It's mostly to just like reinforce my psyche and my mind. And so, no, I haven't had any negative experiences with it at all. They've all been very positive, actually. I mean, most of my negative experiences come from Christianity, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. So practically, how do you use your spiritual practice in your everyday life? I know it's your job, because can you explain to the viewers what you do on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, sure. So my YouTube channel is essentially, like I said, I reveal hidden knowledge, and my goal is to create a new earth and transform consciousness. So I've developed a system called the Neogenian system, which is essentially about, so like after leaving Christianity, I spent my entire life trying to understand reality as clearly as possible. Like I said, this led me to study philosophy, occultism, esoterica, quantum mechanics, altered states of consciousness, a lot of things. And so basically my years of work I've distilled into a system, because I've noticed that there is this essentially knowledge out there that I feel would benefit humanity greatly. But it's either extremely hard to understand, or you have to join some weird society to get it, or it's scattered across multiple disciplines and it's hard to connect everything together. And I feel like this information needs to be made in an accessible manner for anyone who wants to know it and understand it. So long story short, my channel is about providing information, hidden knowledge to people to help raise their consciousness in a very like easy to understand way. And so, yeah, so I've created a system in understanding towards understanding reality. And so if we're asking, so there's multiple aspects to the system, of course. There's, metaphysics, there's politics, there's cosmology, there's, it maps out the soul, all kinds of stuff. But for like practical reasons, for practical purposes, I follow inner star actualization and will forming. Inner star actualization is about working with unconscious energies, like the shadow self, the mirror self, which entails the unification of masculine and feminine energies, and the power self, which entails cultivating your inner potential. And then will forming is, of course, giving form to your will. It's kind of like an analog to magic, but just approached in a different way.
So for the everyday person who's, doesn't really practice the occult,
yes,
how will all of those theories benefit them in their practical everyday life?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very interesting because it completely, I get this question a lot. I talk about this stuff on my channel and they go, okay, that's fine, whatever, but how does it help me? What's it going to do? What's it going to do for me?
Dumb yourself down for us, please.
No. So I get that a lot. And essentially what it has to do with is that when your perception of what existence is changes, your entire life changes because you realize what's truly important, what existence is, basically what you are, where you are, and why you're here. So in a very practical sense, your entire worldview shifts and changes. So you orient your life in a completely different way. So for me, like in this particular system, understanding, for example, that we are all different aspects of each, like this is part of it, that we're all different aspects of each other. So like I believe in God. I'm not an atheist or anything like that. I believe in God. However, I just believe that we are all God. Not in like a hyperbolic or metaphorical way, but in a very literal way. I think that we are all God exploring itself through individual viewpoints. And so, for example, understanding that cultivates a lot more empathy because you realize, oh, wow, you're a part of me, I'm a part of you. I don't want you to have a bad experience because that's ultimately going to give me / us a bad experience. And we're here to grow and learn and evolve together.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's funny that we have two different belief systems, but we kind of believe the same thing.
Well, yeah, no, it's very like, yeah.
The Bible has like that verse that's like, love your neighbor. And it's because we're all God's children. And then you kind of have that belief.
Absolutely. That's why I say, and that's Jesus saying that. I'm pretty much a fan of most of what Jesus has said. And so Jesus says, yeah, love your neighbor as yourself. It's like, love your neighbor as yourself because they are yourself. They're another manifestation.
What if you have social anxiety though? And you hate everybody? What do you do then?
So I have social anxiety. And
a lot of people who do online creation do. You're not alone, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I don't really know anyone that does online creation because I don't socialize with anybody. But that's interesting. Like for me personally, I don't hate other people. And I think like other people who are like, oh, I hate other people. I think if they actually went to the root of it, they don't actually hate other people. They hate, let's say, how people are behaving or the fact that culture rejects them and that's like a big part of my work too. Like a lot of people that are involved with my work are those that society has rejected, outliers and outcasts. And
really?
Yeah.
That's who you tend to attract.
Oh, absolutely.
Same, except I tend to attract the underdogs, like social underdogs.
That's awesome. I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
And see, I think a lot of the people like the underdogs and the outliers that society deems as weird or strange or are actually very extremely creative and have a lot of power. And it's because society, it's so abnormal. Say, oh, that's weird. They don't understand it. So yeah, I think that's very cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the practical aspect.
Sure.
We got deterred. So what do you tell those mean commenters that are like, who cares? How does this help me?
Yeah, well, like I was saying, when you understand what existence is, your priorities absolutely change 100%. So when you're cultivating a new consciousness, it's sort of like, okay, if you're, there's different levels of consciousness. So if you're at, let's say like a dog wants to eat food and eat bones and bury bones and get pets. Like that's the life of a dog. A human being has self-awareness. And because they have a higher state of consciousness than an animal, they can cultivate a more enriching life in that they can think about the future, plan for their future, that you can have, intimate relationships with people when you're sharing knowledge with each other, etc. So essentially, this is about getting even to a higher level of consciousness. So this higher level of consciousness means that you can have even that much more of a fulfilling life where you're unlocking your true purpose. Like you're literally connecting with your divine self, your eternal nature. And it's like, well, how does this practically help me? It practically helps you because you're going to be able to improve like every aspect of your life, whether it's, understanding maybe personal addictions that you're going through, or different hardships with love, or if you're have like a hard time understanding death or whatnot. Like it puts everything into a big perspective. Like I have no fear of dying because I understand that, like I'm eternal. I don't want to die, but I know that I'm eternal. And so there's no fear there. And that can help a lot of people have a tremendous fear of death. So it just depends on like what someone's looking to get out of it,
So what you're saying is both you and me explore religion to get to the same place where we feel like we're most aligned with our highest self and who we're meant to be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
See, I don't trust myself to make decisions because they always end really poorly. So when I give that power to God to make the decisions and open doorways and present opportunities, and then it just takes so much burden and responsibility off my shoulders where I know God's working for me and I can just relax. So with your belief system, and I could be wrong, is it that you believe that you make your own decisions, you're aware of your own decisions, or do you go to your God?
I am aware of my own decisions. However, I'm connecting with my higher self. So I'm connecting with not my ego self, not my ego consciousness, but going beyond that to my higher self, to my eternal self, to the absolute self, to the soul, or the soul level, or even beyond. You can get to different levels. But essentially what I'm connecting with is the eternal aspect of myself, not the limited ego consciousness. And a lot of people, when they interact with or approach or get intuitions from their divine self, they think that is God. A lot of people think that and it is God to a certain extent, but it's not like an external deity, like in my opinion, how it's described in the Bible. Rather, it's the fundamental essence and force of all reality that connects us all together, which we are. So we're tapping into that. So long story short, I believe that I'm making the decisions for myself, but it's my higher self, my self with like a capital S, not my ego self. Yeah. So what you would say about like connecting to God and getting these intuitions about decisions that you're making. In my system that I'm talking about, that would be connecting to one's higher self. Now, some people like to look at their higher self as being something external. It helps. Some people prefer that. Like they'll look at their self as being their holy guardian angel or something, and they'll pray to their holy guardian angel. And so some people like to externalize it into a being because it just helps them. It's whatever is most psychologically effective for someone.
So when you hear praise music, like when you said you get triggered, I want to go back to the beginning. You get triggered by anything that reminds you of the church you grew up in.
Yeah.
So when you hear people putting on Jesus music, like I love Jesus, does that give you a body reaction?
Yeah, I wouldn't be my favorite thing to listen to, I'd say.
Okay.
And funny enough, that's actually one aspect that was sort of a catalyst for me stepping away from Christianity. So I wasn't like I said, I was really strict Christian household, so I wasn't really allowed to listen to any secular music. I had really only heard Christian
secular music.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what that means like pop music that's on the radio.
Just non-Christian. Anything that's not Christian. Anything that wasn't Christian was like, no, that's evil. So I had really only been exposed to Christian music, to praise music. And I was getting older. I was starting to question, like I said, in my teens. I was already started questioning because the Bible had a lot of weird stuff in it. And but I remember my grandmother brought over a DVD when DVDs were a thing, that was supposed to scare Christian kids away from satanic music. So it was called like The Evils of Satanic Music or something like that. And it had a lot of rock bands and metal bands performing. And this was my first time being exposed to this type of music. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. This is so cool. And because one of the things I really liked about it was that these individuals were so raw and expressing themselves. They were like turning, I look at art as like turning your soul inside out. You're like expressing and externalizing your soul. Art is like a soul language to me. And you could like see and feel who these people were. And before, I'm only was subjected to praise music, which is all about God, not about the self, not about expression, but just praising God. And for me, I was like, wow, this is, if this is considered wrong, something with the system itself must be wrong, because it seems pretty good. Yeah.
So they would play those bands backwards, or that's what they would do?
Oh, no. It was just to scare. It was just clips of like.
They were pretty much telling you, look at this enticing thing you can't listen to. Isn't it cool? They pretty much pushed you into it.
Yeah, pretty much. It was what was it supposed to do? It was supposed to. Kids were supposed to watch it and go, "Oh my God, look at Ozzy Osbourne. That guy's crazy," or something. I was like,
"No,
that's
you watch
really
Ozzy Osbourne, you go, wow, that."
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the issue I had with churches growing up, is I felt like they were making witchcraft and the devil look so enticing. Like, you can't listen to that. It's
true.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So I believe like a new wave of Christians are rising, where we're not going to sit here and evangelize you and be like, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hell. Like, that's not enticing. That's repulsive.
Yeah.
So I noticed like a lot of Christians have been woken up to just being a light, or like just walking with God and being an example, and people who resonate can also get into it. Because the reason why I really got into Christianity is because I had 2 women I really admired in my life. No, 3 women that were devout Christians. And I used to be like, wow, they're so kind, they're so loving, they're so genuine. It's not about trying to convert me. They just actually care about me. And they were such beautiful women. And I was like, I want to worship God and be a Christian because of those women and just who they are.
Yeah.
They kind of influenced me.
Nice. Yeah.
And so what my aspirations as a Christian is to be like that, where people look at my behavior or look at my journey and they're like, wow, I want to go to God because of that. And I feel like the appeal with you is that you do seem, very intelligent, very charismatic on camera. And I feel like people who resonate with your energy might want to check out your belief system, because they might be like, wow, Morg is really put together. He's really in his purpose. Maybe I should listen to what he's teaching,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I try to make my information as available as possible. I'm not here to convert anyone or tell anyone what to think. I just say, here it is. If someone wants to take a look at it and use it to help their lives. That's essentially right. But no, I mean, the type of Christianity that you're describing is nothing that I have an issue with at all. My only issue with Christianity is people who are trying to like restrict the rights of others or tell others how they should live their lives or whatever. But if that's not part of it, I have no issue with it. Like I said, I promote or don't promote, but I talk about Gnostic Christianity, which I think is fantastic.
Explain Gnostic Christianity a little better.
Sure. So Gnostic Christianity is an early form of Christianity where, because when Christianity was first getting formed, there was a whole debate of like, what even is Christianity? And this is before the church came along and sort of backed by the power of the Roman Empire said, this is what everyone's going to believe. So before that, there were different versions of Christianity. And there were groups of individuals known as Gnostics who claimed to have the secret teachings of Jesus. And these secret teachings of Jesus were completely different from what we're taught today, where, you have the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Well, how do we know they're legit?
What do you
secret
mean?
Teachings that aren't in the Bible. How do we know they're like actually?
Oh, I would say intuition.
Oh.
Yeah. See, when for me, when you're dealing with information like this, like, I don't believe that the things in the Bible literally happened. I don't think Jesus turned water into wine, walked on water, and rose from the dead. I think that these are all stories and metaphors and parables. And so when I look at certain stories, it's like, which stories resonate more with how reality actually is? And so when you look at the Old Testament and you see God commanding, the death of firstborn children and accepting a burnt virgin sacrifice and unaliving masses of people, like, is this something that resonates with what reality should be? And the Gnostics basically went, look, if you look at these stories, this being is not a good being. This is an evil being. They were down with Jesus. They said Jesus was a messenger from a higher God, a true God of light. And one thing that I really like about Gnosticism a lot is that, in my opinion, Christianity right now is very patriarchal. And Gnosticism has a ton of very powerful feminine figures, which I really like. So in Gnosticism, there is Barbelo, who is the first emanation of the source, who is the mother goddess of everything. And there is Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, who essentially is the one who sent Jesus to help humanity wake up to the fact that we're divine. So in Gnosticism, we're all divine, and we have been trapped in a prison of matter and in a cycle of reincarnation. And according to Gnosticism, the God of the Bible are archons. They're evil beings here to keep us enslaved and keep us trapped. So the goal of Gnosticism is to connect with our divine selves and realize our divinity so we can return to unification with the source, or what they called the pleroma, essentially. Now, I don't believe that this stuff is literally true. I don't believe that this literally happened, but I think that these stories are much more empowering and are tapping into archetypal energy that's much more inclusive and progressive and ultimately beneficial.
I agree. So, is Lilith in the Bible, or is that just
So Lilith is in the alphabet of Ben Sirah. And
what is that for those of us who are not educated on it?
It was just a text written, I think, in the medieval era.
Okay.
And it was, so, I mean, it's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. And it wasn't positive. It was actually very misogynistic. It wasn't like saying Lilith was great. They were saying, oh, Lilith was a demon and she was horrible. But yeah, the story of Lilith, but Lilith has now become a very powerful divine feminine figure, which is really cool. And I like Lilith a lot because basically in the story of Lilith, Adam and Eve, Eve wasn't there yet. Adam and Lilith were both created from the same thing, the dust of the ground. And so Lilith wanted to be equal to Adam. And Adam was like, no, I have to be above you. You have to submit to me. And Lilith, rather than submitting to Adam, uttered the ineffable name of God, which means like essentially took on the power of God, grew wings and flew from the Garden of Eden. And she became the mother of demons because, she was demonized.
But it's not a biblical story. It's not something that was removed from the Bible.
No, it wasn't the Bible. So in the Bible, in Genesis, there are 2 accounts of creation. And basically, Christians were confused by this. And not even just Christians, but in Judaism as well. Because they're like, okay, why are there 2 creation stories in the Bible? And so they were trying to figure out why. Lilith was one proposed, maybe Adam had 2 wives. And so he had to do it twice. But it's not in the Bible. It was one attempt at understanding why there were 2 creation stories. But on that note as well, like with regard to Gnosticism, like Eve is also an extremely powerful character. In Gnosticism, Eve isn't looked at, she was tempted by the serpent, she caused humanity to fall. Eve is looked at as a hero who brought knowledge to humanity. And the serpent is even looked at as Eve's higher self, helping Eve come to knowledge so that she could gift it to humanity, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, because with the snake in the Eve and Adam story, the snake is a demon that tells her that she can know what God knows, but it comes with, because she didn't trust God and she gave in to the wisdom, it made her aware of her nakedness. And she essentially, I think what the Bible's saying is that it made her aware of the emotion of shame. And before, just trusting God naively, she didn't feel shame. So it's almost like the knowledge the serpent gave her wasn't all good. It was actually kind of bad.
Well, I mean, that would be the fundamentalist, like, Christian interpretation, right? Yeah. But the Gnostics would be like, no, that's not true. They would essentially say, they would say, why would God make knowledge forbidden? That should be a red flag. And essentially Eve, so the whole idea with Gnosticism is that these forces are trying to keep humanity in a lower state of consciousness. So by making knowledge, and Adam and Eve were originally a single being, according to Gnosticism, and God split them in 2 to try and keep them from unifying and realizing their divine power.
Whoa. So you would say that being gender neutral, where you're both masculine and feminine, is the higher way to live according to Gnosticism? Well,
according to Gnosticism, we're basically, at a soul level, we're androgynous. Now, we are expressed as what we are in the material world. But yeah, the soul is energy. The soul is light. It's not, male nor female. It's energy. Yeah. And it's even in the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip, I believe as well, where Jesus Christ basically says, when you make the two into the one, the above like the below, the male like the female like the male, the inner like the outer, then you will enter the kingdom. And so it's about the unification of opposites into like this divine force. And that doesn't mean, that doesn't change. I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they'd be like, oh, what do you mean I have to change my gender? It's like, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just about understanding that we have a whole range of energies that we can tap into and utilize. And we're more powerful when we use both. Just like we don't want to use only our left side of the brain or only our right side. We want to have them working together in tandem. And it's about harmonizing the energies together. And that's sort of like the symbolism of the bridal chamber, the coming together of the masculine, the feminine, et cetera. We're rituals to exemplify or signify the synthesis of these energies together. One of the things I really dislike about fundamentalist Christianity is it's very, very patriarchal. And if you look at history, it's been used to oppress women so much. There's so much in the New Testament saying women aren't allowed to teach, that they're less than men, that they always have to submit. There's just, it's not super good.
Yeah, that's actually a part of the Bible that I don't necessarily agree with. So,
yeah. But I think that's great that you can look at the Bible and say, hey, I don't agree with some of this stuff. That's awesome. A lot of Christians are like, oh, well, it's the word of God. We have to.
Right.
So I think that's great. Yeah.
Right. Do you think that some women might actually be happier just submitting to the Bible's view of women, like to be submissive and quiet and to submit to her husband?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If someone wants to live that way, that's totally acceptable. It's just when you say that everyone has to live this way, that's
no, like that's. Do you think that women are happier being more empowered in today's society?
Do I think women are more happier being more empowered?
Yeah, like where it's less sexist, less going with the ways of the Bible, and more where women can be leaders, they can be teachers, they can make their own money. Do you think that women in society are happier now?
I think that women and just everyone in general are happier when they're able to find their true purpose. And whether that's becoming a lawyer or becoming a scientist or staying at home and raising a family, right. Whatever they resonate with most, I think is what will ultimately make them and make everyone happy. And everyone should just have the opportunity to try things out and see what it is that they like.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So Morg, thank you so much for being on my channel. I hope you guys check out his socials because he has a lot of very cool content if you're interested. But I was really hoping to see you swallow a sword in real life because I used to watch your reality show.
You did?
Yeah, I told you I did.
Oh, I did. I must have forgot. You watched it?
Yeah, I used to watch it. Like me and my friends used to watch it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I saw you online." I was like, "That's the guy from the Freak Show."
Oh, nice. Well, you have good taste. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I can swallow a sword. You want me to get it right now, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah. So let me go get the camera. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, not the camera, the sword.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take this sword, place it in the mouth, swallow it all the way down into the stomach, turn, bend over, and then you're going to pull it out. Ready?
That's amazing.
Good job. You did great.
Thanks.
Thank you.